Hi there. 2 weeks ago from today, back on May 22nd, Marvel made the shocking announcement that they have delayed both of the next Avengers movies by half a year each, from summer releases to Christmas releases. Now, a lot of people are panicking about this or speculating, but if you're following the behind the scenes state of the industry news, this actually makes a lot of sense. Why is this happening? Which I will very quickly go over in this video. Now, the reason I'm making this video is it's more of a quick preview for a longer video I was working on anyway about why are so many projects delayed, and it isn't just the reason this one was delayed, but it's one aspect that I want to expand on more because this is just a great example that came up. That I've seen too many channels doing wild speculation about, oh, they're counter scheduling against other things or internal arguments because the fanboys are always speculating about drama as opposed to tangible business reasons things are happening. And while those do sometimes play a factor, the biggest thing which I think, based on the evidence, affected this, the VFX crunch. This is one of the major reasons so many things were getting delayed. Now, I'm keeping this video intentionally short so this one point is more impactful. I'm not going to do the 30-minute version. That they have been overstretching their VFX resources since the streaming boom began, since Marvel started churning out so many movies, and not just Marvel, but everyone. And it really hit tilt by 2023. I mean, if you've been paying even casual attention, all the controversy around when Ant-Man 3 Quantumania came out and the VFX weren't great. But this was happening across the board to every company, not just Disney, that they goddamn overexpanded. They overexpanded faster than the VFX infrastructure could really keep up with it. They pushed everyone to the breaking point. It is a lot similar to, it's pretty much the same thing as the crunch culture that's in the video game industry. And what a benign term, the crunch industry. It's you're working your companies like rented mules, and when they tell you we physically do not have the infrastructure to do something at that scale, you not only don't believe them, you make them work at half pay. But if you have people working 23-hour shifts, sleeping in the office, at a certain point you have to go, I should probably expand my infrastructure for this kind of thing, instead of just pushing it to the breaking point all the time. But this was already a widespread problem, well reported on for over 2 years now, of they have stretched the VFX companies to the breaking point. The issue is that the VFX companies weren't unionized. Even the Writers Guild was a union and they were losing things. They just had third-party contractors for their VFX companies for both TV and film. This was an industry-wide problem. And rather than fix it, you may have noticed that a lot of projects have multiple VFX companies attached to them lately. All they did was bundle it by splitting it between smaller companies. In my mind, very similar to like one of those junk bonds from the 2008 mortgage crisis where, well, we have these mortgages that aren't really good, but we'll bundle them together. It's like gambling. That if we bundle a dozen of them together, even if one or two fail, overall they'll be able to pick up the slack. That imagine that you're a VFX company that to sustain yourself you need to work on a full movie. But because they wanted to put so much VFX in to compete with other companies that are, no, it's the race to have the most shiny things on screen. If you can make like 100 shots in a movie, they're asking you to make 200 shots for the same level of pay. And you're going, that is double what our infrastructure can sustain. Or I would have to hire more people and buy more machinery and servers to be able to do that level of VFX work. This is twice as big of a job as you're treating it. Well, just work harder and longer hours. And the result is that a lot of VFX companies have a very slim profit margin and are constantly in danger of shutting down. Many frequently do. Not the big names like Industrial Light and Magic. I'm talking about the subdivisions and subcontractors that they all use are constantly on the bubble. Rather than try to fix the situation, they bundled it. Where basically imagine Disney saying, okay, this is too much work for one company. 200 shots in a single movie. Okay, so we're still going to have 200 shots, but I'll hire two companies to each do 100 shots. Sounds fair. But then they turn to the company and say, well, because you're only doing half the movie, we're only going to give you half pay. Which is ridiculous, that you didn't fix the... Proportionately, if you're doing half the work at half pay, when the problem was that this is not proportionate work, you're making us work at double capacity, having it and your resources, they cancel each other out. But that was kind of the point. Now, that's just 2 companies. Imagine a movie split between 6 subcontractors, a dozen subcontractors for VFX companies. It's a lot like bundling those subprime mortgages, where the actual mentality was, if 1 or 2 or even 3 of these fail, by which I mean physically go bankrupt because they're not unionized, we are barely paying them, and they are working 20-hour shifts with limited resources, even if we work these guys like rented mules to the point of burnout, to the point that 2 out of a dozen shut down, the other 10 can pick up the slack. This was not addressing the core problem. Finally, this year, VFX companies made their first big union contracts. They unionized. Not for all the third-party companies, but at the very least, what got the ball rolling, which people are treating as advancing this, Marvel's internal VFX company unionized. And they say this will lead to unionization from third parties. It'll have a knock-on effect. We'll see that. It'll take a couple of years, but it will happen, which is good. They unionized, it was finalized May 15th, and they announced, we have finalized our VFX union contract with Disney on May 21st. May 22nd, literally the next day, Marvel announces we're going to have to delay the next 2 Avengers movies by half a year each. It is no coincidence that they are at a point where the production schedules they're asking for are absurd. That to get those companies, for the companies to get those movies out by next summer would push the VFX companies to the breaking point. They'd be working them to death to do that. That they've at least, through negotiating with the unions, said, okay, a more realistic time scale is by Christmas, not next summer. That is directly related to the fact that they have unionized and are starting to set more realistic work goals, because it was reaching the heights of absurdity what they were doing to the VFX companies. And this had because everyone draws from the same well, this was having a knock-on effect on not just movies, but TV shows. I mean, House of the Dragon uses some shots from Weta Workshop or Industrial Light and Magic, as you shop out like a cityscape here, or one dragon shot there, little things, because there's hundreds of shots. And because it's subprime mortgage sliced into, we're shopping it out to over a dozen little shots here or there out of 200 to a dozen VFX companies, this has a knock-on effect on everyone. So while it is unfortunate for us that we have to wait another half year, this is the industry adjusting to the post-boom, post-strike era of the writer's strike, has finally come around. This has been going on in the background, if you weren't paying attention, for the last year, of everyone going, now that the writers and actors won their strikes, it's only a matter of time before the VFX companies, who are being worked to death, finally unionize and get the studios to set more realistic goals. So while there is argument about internal politics and stuff, I'm not saying that isn't a factor, or counter-programming against other studios. I think by far the biggest factor is the day before they established a union contract with the VFX company saying, your prior production goals are ridiculously unrealistic. So overall, this is good for the health of the industry. This is what we were asking for since the backlash in 2023 to Ant-Man 3 and other movies. That this is really, we can tell you're rushing the CGI because you're asking for far more than your infrastructure could ever sustain. So while these are growing pains, this is a good thing for the long-term health of these franchises. Getting the VFX and writers unionized to smooth operations. I'm working on a bigger video about how this is affecting television overall, including Marvel, because Marvel is a big example of everything leading up to Secret Invasion And then for 2 years, they had behind the scenes reforms that finally paid off with Daredevil Born Again. And the articles going down the list of these were problems we had to fix, that they didn't have showrunners, they just had movie execs dropping in. The VFX crunch was one of the three big reasons of why all these things were happening and the reforms that are starting to fix them. We were waiting for something like this. It will help Marvel both in theaters and on streaming TV. So please like and subscribe. Stick around for the bigger report.